So you know that message I got from Bilal last time? You know, the one saying he wanted to meet? Turns out, big surprise, it wasn't from him at all. No, turns out it was from three guys in ski masks and bulletproof vests who showed up with really big guns. Oh, those poor, stupid guys. They had no idea what they were dealing with. This is Spines. Right after my last message, after I mentioned Bilal's name, stuff started showing up in the place I've been living. The first time it was 3 willow leaves on the doorstep. There aren't any willows around here, so I knew someone had to have left them there on purpose. The second message was a frog in my living room. That probably sounds gross, but he's actually really cute with these little gold speckles. I got him a little pool to play in and some crickets, and I named him Akira. He's not in a cage. I figure he'll stay as long as he wants, or as long as Bilal wants. I don't really know how I knew these messages were from Bilal. I just felt sure of it, the same way I felt sure about Carson and the sculptures. It's like there are some memories I don't quite have, like they're under the surface, but they still nudge me in the right direction sometimes. That said, those submerged memories aren't perfect. I misinterpreted Bilal's messages at first. I thought they were warnings, or maybe calls for help. They're not. But more on that later. Because now I feel like it's time to talk about what happened in the attic. I guess people have noticed how much I avoid talking about that day. You would too if you were there, believe me. But I guess if it brings me more answers, I should probably tell people what happened. As you know by now, everything before the attic is hazy, cluttered, full of memories that don't make any sense. I don't remember how any of us got there, so I guess I have to skip that part. The part of the attic I do remember clearly, and I guess the first part of my life I can remember clearly, goes like this. I woke up with my chest hurting. Imagine trying to breathe in an icicle, a stabbing, freezing pain going right into your lungs, and that might be a tiny fraction of what I was feeling. I couldn't move. I just lay on my back, gasping, wishing I'd pass out again. And even though the air going into my lungs felt achingly, horribly cold, everything else around me felt warm. At first, all I could see was a bare wood ceiling. I thought it was moving at first, but that was just the flicker of candlelight. I wish the first thing I saw when I sat up had been your face, Zachary, but it wasn't. It was the Skull Man. The Skull Man was tall and shirtless, and the reason I call him the Skull Man is because he wore a horse's skull as a mask, or some kind of big animal skull. Something long and heavy looking. But horns had been added to it, horns that I don't think had been on this skull originally. It was a little cheap looking, to be honest. So was his loincloth. Seriously, a goddamn loincloth. Like he was an extra on the set of Exodus or something. It almost would have been funny, except he was also pointing a black glass knife at me. Obsidian, I think. I looked down at myself, and that's when I realized the warm liquid I'd been floating in was a kiddie pool full of blood. That's right, a kiddie pool. Blue with little cartoon fish on the sides. That also might have been kind of funny except for the blood, and also the fact that I held little dry animal skulls in my hands, maybe from birds or cats. I dropped them and they sank into the red. Then I looked around and saw the 8, my friends, and all of them were naked and tied up, arranged in a circle around the pool. All of them had one arm tied to these little pipes or sluices or something, and all of them bled from deep cuts in their wrists. I saw all of them, all 8, and I knew their names and things about them, and more than anything, I wanted to help them. But then I saw you, Zachary, sitting across from me in the pool, cross-legged, also holding a skull. You stared at me, and I stared at you, and yours was the only name I didn't know. But I knew we loved each other. We were meant for each other. I knew that the same way I knew the sky was blue and gravity keeps us on the ground and leaves grow on trees. It was just a fact. I didn't have a whole lot of time to bask in that love, though, because the skull man grabbed my arm. He was chanting something, but it was hard to understand his voice under that hollow mask. I did catch one phrase, though. Binding of the mosaics. I spent so much time trying to figure out what that meant. Binding of the mosaics. Not at the time, though. At the time, I was just screaming. I didn't think. I grabbed the hand holding the knife and I shoved it back up into his chest as hard as I could. I don't know which of us was more surprised by how strong I am. Me or him. Probably him. And then, as the skull man fell, you, Zachary, you opened your mouth and you made that sound. I still don't know the word for it. Not a shriek, because that's a human sound. More like tearing metal, the wing of a jet ripping off midair. And that sound somehow... Well, I know you remember this part, but for the folks listening at home, that sound tore off all the ropes holding our friends. They all got up and ran for the door. Even though they'd all bled so much, they must have felt dizzy and sick. One of them, I think Aisha, she kicked over some of the candles as she ran. The flame touched something else, and pretty soon the whole place went up. The skull man was still alive when I ran out of the attic. I remember, Zachary, you were hauling me along by my wrist, but I looked back, and I saw the skull man twitching and trying to pull himself toward the pool full of blood. Then he was out of sight, and we were tumbling down wooden stairs. That's the first time I understood we were in an attic, and beneath us was a house, and outside was the world. I don't remember much about getting out of the house, but I know I tripped and fell on the pavement outside. It knocked the wind out of me, and you let go of my hand. I don't know where you went. The others were already gone. When I could breathe again, I looked up and saw the flames coming out of the top of the house, smoke pouring out through the windows. If you weren't there, you're probably picturing the house wrong. The listeners at home are probably picturing some spooky, gothic ruin, something that looks like it should be haunted. But it wasn't like that. It was just another McMansion, boring, white and pink stucco, badly constructed. Even before it caught fire and collapsed in on itself, I wouldn't have liked it. People started to gather in the yard across the street. Some part of me knew I shouldn't be seen, that I shouldn't be there when the police arrived. I still have that feeling, that thing holding me back from just walking into a police station and asking for help, even though it would probably be easier than what I'm doing now. Somehow I just know that would be a bad, bad idea. So I ran. I got on my feet and I ran until I found a dark alley between 2 houses. I crouched there and tried to catch my breath. And that's when I saw a little cactus growing outside the alley, out of someone's yard. And standing on it was a cactus wren. I saw it and I knew what it was, but I also realized I didn't know how I knew. I didn't remember learning about birds or anything else. But I saw the little bird standing on those spines without getting hurt, and the way it stared back at me without fear, I guess that's the moment I decided I'd be Wren until I figured out my real name. And that, dear listeners, is the story of what happened in the attic. So, about those guys pretending to be Bilal. Here's what happened there. I went to the address in the email. It looked like a normal house, nothing sinister. As soon as I reached the gate, though, these guys in black ski masks and military-looking clothes pulled up in a van. Not a black van, since that's probably what you're picturing. No, it was an old white van with a carpet cleaning logo on the side. You know, I bet there's no such thing as a real carpet cleaning company. I bet every time you see one of those, they're just a cover for some shady organization like this one. One of the men yelled at me to get into the van. I told him to fuck off. He said, "Get in the van on your own or we'll shoot you in the leg and take you anyway." I said, "Okay, then shoot me." And he did. I have to admit, that came as a surprise. I thought he was bluffing. But he really did shoot me right in the leg. Turns out getting shot really hurts. So I stopped them, the way I stopped Carson. I avoided talking about this before, but I guess this is the best way to warn off any other guys with guns who want to come after me. So here it goes. The way I do this, I reach out and I can feel the water in bodies. And then I just separate it out from the rest. I don't know how I do it, but in the moment it feels really simple. I just find the water and I grab it. Picture a human-shaped lawn sprinkler, water flying out in all directions. That's what it looks like. It's pretty instantaneous, so I don't think they feel any pain. Once the water jumps out of their bodies, all that's left are these dry little husks, like mummies. The human body is something like 60% water, so picture a shrunken little body a little less than half the size of a grown man. That's what's left. I feel bad. I do. After I did that to Carson, I swore I'd never do it again. But, to be fair, that guy did fucking shoot me. Oh, speaking of that, here's another thing you might want to think about if you're a guy who wants to come after me with a gun. I found the bullet hole in my leg, going almost all the way through my calf muscle. Then I did something I didn't know I could do up until that point. I just kneaded the flesh like bread dough, like clay, until the muscles pushed the bullet out and knitted themselves back together. That part still makes me sick to think about, because it's the same thing Carson could do, and that makes me remember what he did with it. But there wasn't much time to think about that then, because there'd been a gunshot, and I knew the police would be here sooner or later. So I fixed my leg, and then I searched the dead men's pockets as fast as I could. There was nothing there. Still, even without finding anything, I think I know who those guys were. Those guys were working for the Seekers. Back to Bilal. Around the same time I started getting his messages, I also started hearing things about a place that's been showing up around the city. Now, if you're wondering how a place can show up anywhere, I'm with you. I didn't get it either at first. But I've been paying street kids to keep an eye out for certain things that might be related to my list. And a couple of them started telling me about the same thing. They said, "Folks say you can't be looking for it. You only find it when you're not thinking about it." Apparently, most people find this place for the first time while playing Pokemon Go. That makes me wonder how many others just passed right by it or through it without realizing it was there because it didn't contain a goddamn Pikachu or whatever. Here's the way they describe it. It's a spot next to a little stream. There's a grassy, soft hill leading down to the water. It smells really nice, like honeysuckle. And at the very edge of the stream, there's a willow tree with branches that touch the ground and the water, like a curtain. While you're there, you can see the water and the grass go all the way out to the horizon without anyone else in sight. But if you try to go deeper into the place, past the stream, you wind up back in the city. Just not always in the same part of the city as where you started. The way these kids describe it, place with the willow tree shows up in all kinds of weird spots. Parking lots, strip malls. One girl even claims she found it in the fitting room of the Gap. I think visiting this place gives them bragging rights. They compete with each other. One kid says he's been there 3 times, another will chime in claiming he's been there 4. I asked these kids what they like about the place. I mean, these are skate punks, teenagers. What the hell would they like about a cute little stream and a willow tree? None of them could really give me a clear answer. They all just said, I don't know, it's just cool. But they couldn't really say why. Naturally, I set out to find it. But you already see the problem with that, right? You can't find it while you're thinking about it. It made for an infuriating couple of days. I tried listening to music, playing games on my phone, getting drunk and wandering around. Nothing worked. I just couldn't stop thinking about it, thinking about looking for it. Still, every once in a while, I'd wake up in the morning and find a few willow leaves on my pillow and the smell of clover and honeysuckle in the air. And Akira stuck around. He stayed in my living room, just hanging out in the little gravel and water-filled bowl I got for him. So I thought, Bilal must want me to find him. Maybe he's stuck there, the only one who can't leave. Maybe I can rescue him. So I kept looking. A memory from before the attic. I'm kissing someone. It's a man, but not Zachary. A man whose name I don't remember now. He starts grabbing my boobs under my shirt. He's grabbing at me, and I'm annoyed because I've already told him I don't want him to do that. But he ignores me and does it anyway. So I pull away, and instead of asking him, I tell him, stop. And he does. He stops and steps away, and his eyes go wide. And in that moment, I realize I can tell him to do anything, and he will. Anything at all. So I ask him to punch himself right in the nose, and he does it. Blood pours down his face, and I feel guilty and sorry. But deep down, there's also this little thrill at what I've done, at what I can do. Just like the kid said, I found it when I least expected it. I was at the gas station filling up my car, and the pump stopped working. I was cursing and struggling with it, trying to get it to start pumping again. And as soon as I got it working, I looked up, and there it was, right at the edge of the gas station parking lot. It was just the way the kids described it. A warm summer day on the edge of a stream far away from this city. Willow branches trailing in the water. A perfect scene. So I went. I wandered along the stream and listened as the sounds of the city faded. I parted the curtain of willow branches, half expecting to find Bilal sitting there. But it was just me. It felt so calm, so peaceful, it was hard to stay focused. I just wanted to lay back on the grass and watch the frogs and the bees have their lazy day, take a nap under the willow tree. But I had a mission, so I made myself focus enough to search for him. I peered into the water and poked through the reeds and cattails along the stream bed, and I stared out at the hills rolling away into the distance. I called out Bilal's name. Nothing. Except that's not really true. I didn't see anything, sure, and I didn't really hear him. But I kept getting the feeling he was standing right behind me, that he was watching me. Not in a creepy way, just like he was there, but I was missing him somehow. Still, every time I turned around to check, it was just me. It was always just me. Finally, I gave up and sat on the edge of the stream, right next to the willow. And then, just as I stopped looking for him, one of the branches stroked my cheek. It could almost have been the wind doing it, except the breeze wasn't blowing that strong. I looked up at the tree and around at the landscape. A voice, one almost hidden under the wind, whispered in my ear. I'm not going to repeat what it said, at least not right now. It's too personal. But I finally understood. Bilal wasn't hiding here. He wasn't crouched behind some bushes or perched up in a tree. But he was here. He was all of it. The tree and the smell of honeysuckle and the sound of the water bubbling. Bilal had a perfect memory of a perfect day. And I think after the attic, he decided to just be that perfect memory and nothing else. I have no idea how he stepped out of this world or out of his body, but I'd never try to drag him back from where he went, from what he became. I'd never be that cruel. So instead, I just sat with him for a while, saying nothing. Then I got up and went back to my car, which was still sitting next to a faulty pump at an ugly gas station. I think I understand now. I thought those messages were warnings, or maybe cries for help. They're not. They're something else. Of all the people on my list, all these people, all these old friends I've tried to find, Bilal is unique. Of all of them, only he forgives me. Spines is a production of Zoom Doom Stories. It's narrated by Ren Jones, written by Jamie Killen, website and logos by Benjamin Pond, produced by Jamie Killen and Benjamin Pond. You can support Spines by visiting patreon.com/Spines Podcast and by subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes.